Hey y'all, welcome to episode 25 of the Coyote Trapping School podcast. In today's episode, you're going to hear an interview I did with Robert Sevon. He's from Tennessee, or he's in Tennessee, but he's a relatively new trapper, and we kind of talk about getting into trapping, finding locations, or not necessarily locations, just finding places to trap, and really, I think it's really interesting, especially for new people, trying to get into trapping. And he also runs a Instagram and Facebook page, and I think he started a YouTube channel now called Lonely Den Trapping. So be sure to go check him out and let me know what you think. Hope y'all are enjoying it, and we'll catch you next time. All right. So Robert, won't you introduce yourself and kind of tell us how you got into trapping and just a little bit about yourself.
All right, Chris. Well, thanks for having me. I am a true YouTube trapper. I definitely got started off of watching videos like yours and Dunlap stuff and Clint Locklear stuff, just kind of watched everybody's stuff. But I started out as a coyote caller, grew up in Nevada, and joined the military. And one of the things that I realized bouncing around from state to state is the one animal that's the easiest to chase and has the least regulations is coyotes.
Yeah.
So I went around calling coyotes in Oregon and North Carolina and Iowa. And after a little bit, I started getting interested in trapping. And I guess probably 6 years ago, I set my first trap and went out there and got plenty of dig ups and learned the hard way that the coyotes are pretty smart critters. And eventually one day I caught that first coyote, and that was it. I was hooked.
That's right. That's right.
That was it. So from then I've just been chasing that rush of that first catch and trying to catch as many coyotes as I can.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much my story.
So with your military, and thank you for your service, by the way.
I appreciate it.
Do you wind up moving on a regular occasion? So you're always kind of looking for new trapping ground?
Right. So for me, I move every 3 to 4 years as long as I don't advance. The last few tours that I've done, we've moved. We've short toured at all those tours because I've advanced. So it's just a constant. I get there, I got to locate property, and I never know anybody there.
Right.
So I typically, I'm mostly a public land trapper. I get there. I use a lot of apps. I use Onyx apps that shows you where all the public land is. And I just get out there and start scouting. And normally that first season's the toughest. And then by the time I get all the coyotes figured out and where they're at, it's time to move to the next place. So
yeah,
it's a good time, but it's definitely a little more challenging than just trapping that farm that you grew up on,
Right. So where all have you trapped since you started? You're in Tennessee now, right?
I'm in Tennessee now. So I started trapping in far west Tennessee, and what's kind of funny is I went from trapping there, and then I got stationed in San Francisco. And of course, as soon as I got out there, trapping was done. So it was more just me reading and hanging out on the internet more than anything, and just trying to collect as much information as I could, hoping that I'd get back to a state that I could trap in. And thankfully, I got sent back to Tennessee again, and I'm about 2 hours east of where I started trapping, and just kind of hit the ground running when I got back out here because I just missed it so bad. I really had to get after it.
Yeah. So what does public land in Tennessee look like? Because I know, at least in Georgia, and I think across the east, the public land is a lot different than out in the western states. You got a lot of the public land is actually state land, like wildlife management areas.
Right.
And
right.
those have different regulations and restrictions. So what's public land trapping in Tennessee look like?
Right. So I grew up in Nevada, which is 90% public land, and you can hunt, shoot, do whatever you want pretty much anywhere. And you don't really need an app for it. You just go out, and as long as it's not marked no trespassing, you're ready to go. But out here, it's a lot less public land, but it's still out there. And they've got, like you said, WMAs. And then there's a power company out here called the Tennessee Valley Authority.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm right on the Tennessee River, and they own a ton of land along the Tennessee River, and they allow us to go out there and trap and hunt and use it as any other public land. So you can jump online, and they have it in Georgia, North Carolina, Alabama, Kentucky, Mississippi, all have TVA land. Pretty much anywhere the Tennessee River runs through, you can find it. So I do a lot of trapping on TVA land, and then they've got the Tennessee Wildlife Resource Agency out here, and they have WMAs. That some of them you're allowed to trap on, some of them you can't, and some of them you can only trap on at certain times of the year due to duck hunting regulations and other things.
Right.
So you are limited a little bit, but there's still, hundreds of thousands of acres out there if you're going to put in the time to get out there and go trap it.
Yeah. So do you run into a lot of other folks trapping on any of that public land?
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of challenges with public land, and sharing it with other users is probably the top challenge as a trapper. Deer hunters, they're out there, and when they're deer hunting and it's deer season, they expect it to be their property a little bit sometimes,
Right.
And it goes back and forth, it's everybody's land, and you gotta kind of learn to trap around the deer hunters. So you need to check your sets a lot of times in the middle of the day instead of early morning or late in the evening.
Yeah.
Or you need to check them in the dark, which I definitely prefer to walk up on critters in the daytime just because I like to be able to see them.
Right.
But yeah, it's definitely it's a challenge with the deer hunters, and then you've got all the houndsmen out there as well, and sometimes they love us and sometimes they don't. But what I've found is if you get to know some of these folks out there while you're out driving the roads and run into a guy that's got a bunch of beagles chasing rabbits or whatever, if you stop and you have a decent conversation with them and exchange phone numbers, you can let them know when you're out setting traps, and they can let you know when they plan on chasing rabbits. And it's a bit of a juggling act, but you can still get it done.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they appreciate it the next year when they've got more rabbits than they've ever seen.
Right.
So
what about
so
other
that's a good
trappers?
deal.
Do you ever run into any other trappers out there?
There's not a lot of trappers out there on public land, so you will run into guys that like to chase coyotes still, guys that are out calling.
Yeah.
So you get a little bit of calling pressure, but I have honestly not seen another trap on public land other than my own. So that's good. I think when it comes to water trapping, you'll get a lot more folks that are out there. But
right.
As far as just dry land trapping, if you got the guts to go out there and set your nice traps out there, you're probably gonna be alone.
Right. So that was another question I had was, what do you what's your trap setup look like? Do you go a little bit lower end because you're sitting on public land, or?
I like to use good equipment, and I think that you just have to accept at the beginning of the season that you might lose a couple traps. I lost one K9 Extreme this year, and I think I probably caught somebody's dog because there was no catch circle, but you could tell somebody found the set and pulled it.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure it was just a houndsman out, and they probably got upset, which I can understand that their dog got caught. So one of the things that I have done is I moved my traps further away from the road, where people might be just even just running around with their dogs and their UTVs out there enjoying the day. I try to get my traps a little deeper back in the woods, and I try not to set any flashy sets out there if possible. Nothing that is going to catch somebody's eye. And in 2 years here, The last 2 years running here on public land, I've only lost one trap, so it's not too bad.
No, that's pretty good. Do
Yeah, yeah.
you stake all your traps, or do you use any drags?
I just started running some drags this year because I've got the dog that I'm running,
Right.
and I've got a few of them, but for the most part, I'm running wolf fangs, and I just stake them and let them go. I think eventually I'll go to drags just because they're quicker for me to pick up, um, and hopefully if you do catch something, it runs out of the public eye.
Right. I know I've followed along on Hoosier Trappers outdoors there trapline shows in
Right,
Arkansas when they're trapping public ground in Arkansas, and they seem to use a lot of drags up there. And
right.
I can only imagine that, especially if you've got a dog, that would be almost a no-brainer.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a big reason why I ended up grabbing a dog was just because I wanted another tool out there to help me find those drags and just something more exciting to add to the trap line, you know.
Right. So let's talk about your dog a little bit. What kind of dog is it?
So Pecos is his name, and he's 8 months old. He's just a pup. So we're trying to figure each other out still, but he's a Catahoula cur, which is the state dog of Louisiana, and they're bred for herding and chasing hogs mostly, but folks use them for coyotes and mountain lions and all kinds of different stuff.
Gotcha. And so do you use him for calling too?
I haven't. I did own a Catahoula prior to him, and I used him for calling a little bit, but didn't get into it too much. But I'll definitely bring him out when I start calling.
Yeah, I've just seen videos and all folks calling and using decoy dogs, and that looks like
Definitely.
especially if you've got a good line of sight, that looks like a pretty slick deal.
Yeah, yeah. It seems to be pretty effective, and I know for me, I won't take him out until I know he's gonna come no matter what. You know, I think
Right.
right now he's so fired up about life that I'm not sure if he gets tangled up with a coyote that he'll run back to me when I holler at him.
Right, right. So did you get him from somebody that's a trapper? Does he have any kind of trapping history in his background, or you just
No, I actually it's kind of a funny story. We got him on Craigslist for $20, and it's the best $20 I've ever spent.
yeah.
But I have no idea what his bloodlines are. I just knew that he was a Catahoula, and I had owned one before, and they seem to be pretty good dogs. So I thought I'd give him a shot, and so far he's doing pretty good.
Yeah, well, good. Have you been able to key in or pick up on anything? Like I know, I think Mark Zager and there's some high profile trappers that run trap line dogs. Have you been able to kind of use him to improve your catches or pick out better locations or anything like that yet?
I would say the best thing with him, just being young, is finding those locations. Every bit of scat out there, he's gonna put his nose on it. And it's amazing the things that you didn't realize you walk by until you get a dog, and all of a sudden you're like, man, there is sign all over this place. I had no idea there were coyotes here, and the dog's just showing it to you as you walk around, you know. And he's been great for that. And then on top of that, he's just kind of a good buddy to have in the truck. And I've got 3 daughters that I like to take trapping with me, but they've got school and other obligations. So it's nice to have a buddy that is going to come with you and never has any plans, you know.
Right.
But
Have Have you done any kind of training or anything with him to try to, so far as just running on the trap line or trying to pick up a key
so
in on scent or anything?
I I started him out on just a coyote pelt in the yard, and I just drag it around the yard and tell him to find it. And he got pretty good with that before he had ever seen a live coyote. Um, but he got to the point where he just thought that the coyote smell meant that he was going to go find something good. So he kind of had to learn that the coyotes aren't his friends. Um, And so one of the bits of advice I got was from Sean Phillips, who's from Down South Trappers,
Yeah.
and him and his dad, they both run dogs, and said you gotta let your dog get bit at some point, you know. And I was like, oh man, I don't know about that. And he was like, they got to learn. So I I brought him out on his first coyote, put him on a leash, let him walk up, kind of figure out what was going on, realized that a coyote was a live thing and not just a pelt, and uh, dispatched the coyote. And then he went to checking out the coyote and tearing into him a little bit, and told him good dog, you know, and brought him out a couple more times, and eventually we get to about the fourth coyote that he's seen, and he's off leash at this point, you know, and gets in there, and I had shot this coyote in the lungs, and he had gotten to the point where he assumed that once he heard the gun go off, that the coyote was done. So he gets in on this coyote and got his first bite, and
Hmm.
so that was a little exciting, but it was a real small female, and I figured it was the best time to kind of let it happen, and I let him get in there, and he learned that coyotes aren't his buddies. So after that, we trapped a couple more coyotes, and he was real timid with them after that. Um, but this last coyote I caught the other day, he was ready to get back into it, but he had real bad mange, so I had to keep him off of it. But he's gradually learning different things about coyotes, and he learned a lot about stepping in traps as well. He's done that a couple times,
Yeah.
and he doesn't step in traps anymore. He did that twice, and uh, he's not a big fan of traps, so he pays pretty good attention when I'm putting him in now, and I think he's learned that those attractive smells aren't for him.
Right.
So he's stayed out of them ever since.
So when you're running your trap line, do you run a good bit of it on foot, or are you mostly riding and kind of riding by where you can check your sets from the truck?
So if I get an opportunity to trap property that I can run by truck, and this is typically going to be private property, I'll set traps right next to the truck.
Right.
I think it's quicker. I know the coyotes run those roads, and I just think that you're more effective if you can run directly out of the truck, or UTV or ATV, or whatever you choose. Um, but with public land, I'm doing most of it by foot. I just grab the trap basket and load it up and get out there. And I'm not sure what a basket of canine extremes weigh, but they weigh enough.
Yeah, I imagine.
But yeah, I just get out there and go for a walk, and get them set out there. And I'm not running a real long line. I think this year I've been running between a dozen and 2 dozen traps most of the year, and
Yeah.
I'd like to run more, but got work and all those other responsibilities out there, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Work always seems to get in the way of having fun. So
That's right. One of these days we'll be old and retired and too broken to enjoy it, but we'll have the time.
that's right. That's right. So you mentioned apps before. What kind of apps do you use for trapping on the trap line?
So I would say my number one app would be Onyx.
Yeah.
Especially if you're a public land guy, or even if you're running private property. It keeps you out of trouble. It keeps you, it shows you where all the property lines are, and it'll keep you where you need to be. Um, and if anything, it'll help you figure out who the guy next door is, so you can go talk to him, and maybe get access to his property, or at least let him know you're out trapping, and it'll help you keep dogs out of your traps.
Yep.
So I really like Onyx. I think it's like $30 something for a year for one state. So it's not too bad of a deal. I run another app. It's called Windy, and it just shows you what the winds are expected to do, what they're doing at that time, and then you can go in there and zoom out. And it'll also show you what the winds are doing across the whole country, so you can kind of see how they blow in your area. Here in Tennessee, I'm right in a spot where the winds constantly shift. We're just like right in a tunnel there. So there's no really prevailing wind. I set the other day for north wind, and we've had south winds all week. So, but that app it does help, and it'll set you up at least for a few days. Um, Another one I've tried out is I Go Trapping. I don't know. Have you checked that one out before?
Yeah, where you can log your sets and lure and catches and everything.
Right, right.
Yep.
So that one's pretty neat, and I think it's a few bucks for life. I know I don't know the guy who created it, but I saw something online the other day that he's doing some updates to it, and you can go in there, you can put your whole trap inventory in there, and it'll let you mark on the map where you set each trap. Um, and so that's a pretty good app too. If you don't want to pay the $30 for Onyx, I think that's a real good option.
Yep.
I'm trying
So
to
are
think if there's
you
anything else I use.
logging your traps in Onyx like as you go?
I do. I
Okay.
do. And there's a little section for notes there. So a lot of times I'll throw little notes in there, what kind of set it was, what I used. Um, it's a little time consuming at times, but more than anything, I use it for the GPS function, and I just mark all my traps on there. And one of the things that I really need to get better at is tracking, what lure and bait I'm using at each spot, because I'll set them in and think I'm going to remember it, and 3 days later I'm like, what did I
Yeah,
put in this hole?
that's right.
So I think it's important to log that stuff, and uh, you need to carry a book or something with you.
Yep.
Yeah, but those are probably my top apps. I run some different river apps here to check the river flows when I'm trapping close to the river. TVA has an app for here that shows what the locks and dams are doing as far as flows go, but that's pretty unique to this area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you run water sets too, or are you just watching kind of how the river
I
runs?
I just started getting into running water sets this year. I don't even know if I'd say I started. I've got a few 220s. I think I got half dozen 220s, and I've been trying to chase some otters in a spot where they've been coming in and messing with me, but I haven't had too much luck with them. And I've got a bunch of beaver spots, but I just haven't. It's just another thing to buy, and I
Yeah.
haven't invested in chasing beavers yet. And I'm just so obsessed with coyotes that it's hard for me to walk out of the field and into the creeks.
Yeah, I don't know. There's something about I love catching a beaver, but man, they're a lot of work. It's a lot of work to get down there and put the sets in. Then when you
Yeah,
catch them, you got to drag that heavy sucker back out of the swamp and
that's
skinning
right.
and fleshing. I mean, there's nothing easy about them, but I don't. There's I still like to catch them. I don't know why.
Yeah, for me, I'm trying to get into learning how to make different lures and baits and stuff. And
Yeah,
those beavers offer so much to the bait and lure maker with the caster and the oil glands and the meat even.
that's right.
Beaver tails, all that stuff can be reused. And um, I figure if anything, I need to get into chasing beavers just so I can be a better coyote trapper.
There you go. Yeah, caster. That's a hot commodity these days.
Yeah, it sure is.
So for your, are you far enough north that you tend to use antifreeze or anything like that to keep your sets working?
I use a little bit. It just depends on the weather's been so crazy the last couple years, but just kind of depends on the week up here. But it'll be 70 one week, and then it's in the teens the next week. So we get a lot of that freeze thaw weather, and
Yep.
I use glycol mixed with urine, and I'll spray my sets on top of them, and that'll just keep the crust off of them.
Okay.
So that works pretty good. I know a lot of guys don't like to spray urine directly on their trap bed, but I haven't had any issues with it. I just mix it up. I normally use Red Fox glycol, 50/50, spray it on that trap bed, and I use mostly peat moss, so it just keeps that peat moss from freezing.
Right.
And then if it gets colder than that, I'll start messing around with flake antifreeze and some of that other stuff.
Yeah, that's something I get questions on here and there, but we have those same swings like you have, but it's not very often that it gets down below freezing and stays there that long. So I've used peat moss here and there, but I've never really used antifreeze. So
Right, yeah, I know a lot of folks will use salt, and I have so many issues with deer even when I use urine that
yeah,
I just try to stay away from the salt if I can.
yeah. So you talked about calling a little bit earlier, and I figure maybe that'll be some interest to some folks listening. What's some of the differences you've seen in calling from the west, where you know from, and then calling in the east, where you don't have the line of sight, you're hunting in timber and things like that?
So one of the biggest things out west, I mean, that noise really travels. So I mean, you can call coyotes from miles away out there, and you can sit on set a lot longer because you know those coyotes might be coming from a long distance away. You get out here in the thicker stuff, and you do a set, and you may only move a half mile, and you can do another set because that noise just isn't traveling as far. And I really don't think you need to sit as long either, unless you're calling bobcats. With bobcats, you want to sit at least for 30 minutes, I'd say. They kind of creep in on you.
Yeah.
But as far as east to west, you're just calling in thicker stuff out here, and it makes a big difference. Out west, you do one set, and you might drive a couple miles before you do another set, But I think the coyotes out here, there seems to be, I mean, there's plenty of coyotes out here, but out west, if I'm going calling, I expect to call in a coyote at some point during the day. Out here, I feel like you can go, and unless you're right where the coyotes are at, you can call all day and never see a single coyote.
Right.
But it's a whole different world. You get out west, and they just seem to be everywhere.
Man, that's what I follow a couple of guys that do kind of competition calling, and
Right.
Man, they'll in a night or a weekend or something like that, and they'll rack up 15 or 20 coyotes. Man,
Yeah, and some of those guys, they're on top of their game. They're just amazing coyote callers.
Right.
And they can do it better than the average caller, and that's what they live for. And it's kind of like you look at some of these big trappers, and they're trapping 100 coyotes a year or more every year, and it's just a different level of trapper, different level of caller,
Yep.
But I think being out west helps. Honestly, being a Nevada boy, doing a little bit of calling out there, I think if I went out there and started trapping now, I'd be a little lost for a while because I'm so used to trapping coyotes out here. So
Right.
It'd be an adjustment for sure.
So what is, just talking about calling for another minute, like a typical setup in the east? It seems that folks, most of what you see videos and on TV shows and all, they're calling in the west. So a lot of folks have the mentality that I want to set up where I can see a long ways.
Right.
But that, to me, that doesn't seem, and I've called a little bit, messed around with a little bit, but it seems like our coyotes tend to shy away from those big open areas. They're gonna slink in behind you in the timber. Is that
definitely? I I think if you look at out west, the cover's so different. Like you've got all that sagebrush, and the coyotes they can cruise through the sage, and they still feel pretty safe because a lot of that sage is shoulder to head height, and they can cruise through there and feel pretty safe, and it's all the cover they have anyways. But out here they like to stick to cover, and I think if you can get back in the thick stuff, and you may have to go with a shotgun instead of a rifle, but I think if you get back in the thick stuff, there's a lot more opportunities than if you just stick to the fields.
Right.
I know around here, a lot of the big callers, they wait for them to cut the beans, and as soon as they cut, those coyotes follow the tractors around and eat mice and all kinds of stuff while they're cutting. And then anytime there's a clean cut field, whether it's grass or beans or whatever, the coyotes come out to play. So the callers watch the farmers and try to get out there and call them right after a field's been cut. But yeah, I think if you want to get in the woods, I know there's a call company from down south. I can't remember what state they're in, but they're called MFK calls, game calls.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've heard of them. But a lot of the calling you see them do, it's all in the thick stuff, and they just slay them. But I've done a little bit of calling in Tennessee, especially when I was a little further west, and you can get them out in the fields, but a lot of times you're going to see them right on the edges if they do come out.
Right.
They definitely don't like to be out there in the wide open,
Yep. So shifting gears to your fur, what do you do? What do you do with your catches, your coyotes that you kill and all that? Do you ship those off? Do you have a local fur buyer? Do you tan it? What do you do?
So I'm kind of dabbling in a little bit of everything right now. Last year I sold to NAFA.
Yeah.
And you know how it is with these southern furs, they don't do great. So I'm trying to look at other options and figure out what I can do. And I trapped one bobcat this year, and the guy's going to pay me a good price on it because he wants to do taxidermy on it.
Yeah.
And then I've got a taxidermist buddy who in the state of Tennessee can't legally buy fur from me, from what I understand, but he can give me free taxidermy, and I can give him free furs. So we kind of have a deal set up where I'm gonna bring him some coyotes, because that's one of his big things. He enjoys doing shoulder mounts, and he'll be able to make money off those shoulder mounts, and he's gonna do free taxidermy for me. So
Okay.
that's a pretty good deal for me. I'll get a lot more out of that than I would selling them.
Right.
And then on top of that, just kind of getting to know people in the area. There's a lot of people that want furs for their man cave, So I think last year I averaged $12.50 at NAFA, and I can make a lot more than $12.50 just selling it to a guy that wants it for his den,
Sure. Yeah.
I'm trying to think what else. I haven't messed around with tanning yet. It's something that I want to get into. I think for these furs down here, you can raise the price on them pretty good if you tan them up, and then just try to sell them on eBay or whatever option you have. And then they do have local sales here. I think they have an auction going on in February with the Tennessee, probably going to mess this up, Tennessee Fur Takers.
Yeah.
And they do an auction in a couple different places every year. And so I may check that out this year. I didn't go last year. But all the money that is taxed, because you always get taxed at those auctions, all the money that's taxed goes back into the Fur Association, which is great.
Right.
If I'm going to get taxed, I'd rather it go back to trapping, than
That's right.
than some rich man's pocketbook. So that's definitely another option that we have here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's when I was in Arkansas, they had one local fur sale there. But in Georgia, that's never something that's is not that I've been trapping that long, but at least as long as I've been trapping, that's never been a thing. And so that's always been kind of a struggle is what do you do? And like you said, I've tried to kind of get creative and figure out some alternatives. Um,
Right.
you never know. So
Do you guys have a NAFA route down there?
yeah, so there's actually there's one that usually picks up in kind of middle Georgia, and then usually and I think he's out of Alabama. Um,
Okay.
and then I think the rep, maybe your same rep out of Kentucky, they make a run down to Chattanooga, and so that's
Okay.
that's
Yep.
close enough too. That's actually what I did last year or this year, earlier this
Right.
year is I made the run up to Chattanooga and met them. And then we also had Groenwalds made a route through too, buying fur.
Oh, no kidding.
And so I've never dealt with them before, and I wished I'd have realized that, and I might have tried them out. But if they make a run through again, I might try that and just see how that is.
Yeah, they're out of Iowa, correct?
Yeah, I think so, somewhere in the
Yep.
Midwest.
Iowa or Illinois, somewhere up there.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, there's lots of different options out there, and I think as a trapper, you got to accept that if you live in the South, you're not going to get rich trapping unless people are paying you to do the actual trapping.
yep,
So I know for me, I offer a free trapping service here because I don't have the time to charge people and feel okay about it, you know.
yeah,
But I offer a free service, and I'm always hoping that people will take me up on it.
yeah.
You
There
know,
you
it doesn't
go.
always work out, but
Yeah,
I've been able to help a couple people out, and that's been good.
yeah. That's what I kind of ran into the same thing. I know there's some folks in my area that are charging for trapping, so I could
Right,
try to hold out and see if somebody's willing to pay me, but that's going to limit
right.
the ability, my opportunities for trapping, or what I'll just go around and knock on farmers' doors and hunting
Yep.
clubs and as long as I can trap during trapping season, yeah, I'll do it no charge.
Yeah,
And
yeah, definitely.
so
And
I'd much rather do that and spend my time trapping than spend my time sitting waiting, hoping somebody's going to call me. So,
yeah, 100%. And once it becomes a job, I don't know if it's as much fun. So
well,
I'd
I
rather.
guarantee it's definitely I have done and do a little bit out of season,
Right,
but it puts more pressure on you, or it does me. You get to
right.
feel a lot more pressure to perform and make sure that the landowner's getting what they're paying you for. So
Definitely,
if you
definitely.
you go through a dry spell or start having traps dug up or things like that, man, that starts to worry you and definitely does take some of the fun out of it. Adds some
Right.
stress to it. So
Yeah, I'm sure the landowners expect results, and like anybody, you're probably your own toughest critic. So
that's right.
you want to see results as well. And I know I don't know what the laws are down there where you're at, but here in Tennessee, you got to be licensed and insured and approved by the TWRA. And um, if if you're not ready to do it full time, it's not really worth the cost of getting the insurance.
Yeah, that's how in Georgia you have to be licensed, and to get licensed is pretty simple. And that license actually doesn't cost anymore. You have to have the commercial trapping license,
Okay,
but then you don't have. There's no additional charge for the nuisance permit. So
gotcha.
and right now the law doesn't require you to have any kind of insurance. The landowner may want you to, but
Right,
yeah, you gotta have some jobs lined up to make that make sense then. So
definitely.
now, all right. So I know following you online, you've got Lonely Den Trapping on Instagram, and you've got a Facebook group, and I think you just started a YouTube channel, right?
Yeah, I've got Lonely Den Trapping on Instagram. On Facebook, it's Lonely Den Trapping Group. And then just started a YouTube. I don't have enough followers to have a good URL, so you just have to search for me. And it's Lonely Den Trapping on YouTube, and I've got maybe a little less than a dozen videos on there. I just got her started, so um, it's definitely interesting trying to figure out how to talk in front of a camera and make sure that people can see your face. And there's so many things that go into it when you're out there kind of filming yourself. And I got a dog running around, and it's chaos, but I'm enjoying it so far.
Good. And that's just, you just kind of, from what being in your group and all, it seems like everything's just kind of educational, trying to inform people and help people as they're trying to become trappers.
Definitely. For me, I started out, like I said, I'm a YouTube trapper, and I didn't have a big mentor that taught me how to do all of these things. So I want to promote trapping. I want to give back to trapping, and if I can help one guy catch his first coyote, that's enough payment for me. So I enjoy getting on there and talking trapping with everybody, and I've had a lot of folks online that have helped me out, and I just hope that I can give back in some way to trapping.
Yeah, yeah. What's a good piece of advice for a beginning trapper? I know you get questions in your Facebook group and all. What would be your top piece of advice to somebody that's looking to try to get started trapping coyotes?
My top piece of advice would be to have patience and don't get frustrated, because catching coyotes it's frustrating until it's not, and
Yeah,
then it's still kind of sometimes frustrating. But I know trying to catch my first coyote, it was just dig up after dig up, and it was just little tiny things that I got advice on, um, that slowly got me to where I needed to be, where I wasn't getting dig ups, or at least not on a regular basis. And um, you just kind of slowly start to learn who gives good advice and who gives bad advice. Always be a bit of a skeptic when you're online with 12,000 people in a group,
yeah.
um, and realize that not all advice that's given is good. But you get out there, and the best teacher is experience. So all you can do is take the advice that you're given and take it out of the field and put it into play, and see what works and what doesn't. And um, like I was saying, just stay patient. Don't get frustrated when you go for a whole I've seen guys that have gone for 5 seasons without catching a coyote, and then all of a sudden they catch 5 coyotes in a week. So
Yeah,
it it's it's not an easy thing to do at first, and you just got to learn to love it and not expect to get rich, and just go out there for the fun of being in God's woods.
that's right. That's good advice, because I know that I get a lot of people that'll message me, or I've had sets out for, I'm not making any catches. Well, how long have you had them set? And, sometimes
Right.
it's a week, sometimes it's 2 weeks. And if you've got good sets on good locations, just give them time, because they'll pay off.
Yeah, and I think that's tough for guys that catch a lot of coyotes still. After day 4, I'm starting to doubt myself.
Yep, that's for
What's going on
sure.
here? Where's my catches at? And I've definitely pulled traps and gone back to the location a few days later and been like, oh, I should have left this trap here. There's tracks everywhere.
Yep,
So you got to have faith and confidence in what you put out there. And if your traps aren't being disturbed, just let them do their job. Let them sit out there, and eventually someone will come by and get itself caught.
that's it. Well, is there? I think that kind of wraps up kind of what the little few notes I had. Is there anything else you can think about, want to mention or cover?
No, I think that's it. I just want to say thanks for having me, Chris, and thanks for everything you do for trapping and the industry. And I hope you keep on doing it.
Yeah, man, that's the plan. I wish, looking back, I wished I'd have started the podcast a lot sooner, but it's been a lot of fun, and now starting, I've been doing the last couple of weeks, been doing some interviews, and that's been a lot of fun talking trapping with folks, and I think that's gonna that's going to provide more value and help more folks out. So I'm enjoying it, and that's the plan. I intend to keep it up. So
Definitely, there's a lot of good folks in trapping, and I think if anything, the thing that I enjoy the most about switching from the calling community to the trapping community is the people, and I've just been real impressed with all the old timers and how much help they've given to everybody I've seen online. Just a good bunch of people out there that all the trappers are, you know.
that's right. That's for sure. That's one of my pieces of advice for people that are interested in trapping is if you figure out your state trapping association and go to the conventions, go to their spring flings or their meetings, and just start talking with folks. A lot of those guys are always looking to talk and are glad to talk trapping, and that's a great way to get an introduction and get a lot of knowledge dumped on you at one time, because that's what those associations are for, is those guys
Definitely.
want to promote and continue trapping. So
That's right. That's right. And a lot of these guys are getting older, so I really think it's our job to keep the tradition going and step in as they step out and just try to give back the same that they gave to us.
yep, that's right. That's right. All right, Robert. Well, man, I really appreciate it, and I hope you wish you the best of luck on your trap line. Maybe our weather will kind of stabilize, and maybe the rain will stop. We'll see.
I sure hope so. It's been great talking to you, Chris.
All right. Thanks, Robert.